right, ladies and gentlemen, again, as always, appreciate you coming along for the ride again. Again, don't forget that we do have another giveaway coming on up here. We got a hat, but it's all black lettering. It's really cool. It's something we'll go ahead and give out here in the next week. So we'll make sure to get you out there and how you can win. A lot of things to look up anyway. But in regardless, like we've said before, and we'll say again, please like, subscribe, spread the word. We are getting a lot of our stuff on YouTube as well. So not only can you catch it on Rockfin, but by the way, if you head to Rockfin, please go ahead support a small business if you can. Get out there and get a subscription in that goes for both baseball and if you're a wrestling fan, for wrestling. So go ahead and get that subscription in there, and you can catch all of not just the ahead rankings, of course, not just some highlight reels, really cool stories and more. But you can also catch up with all the interviews that we have. We are putting them on Rockfin ahead of YouTube, so you can get it well ahead of everybody if you go there and check that out. Again, go ahead and get a subscription on Rockfin, and I guarantee you'll really like that. And hey, give it for the holidays. I know that next holiday we have coming on up will be, I guess, Valentine's Day. That's something. I mean, I don't know how romantic it is, but it could be a good gesture for all the wives out there wanting to give something to their husbands. Hey, here we go. All right, so without any further dawdling around, again, this episode is brought to you by the great folks at Victory Mounds. Check them out today at victorymounds.com. As always, from portable pitching mounds, field equipment, field services, all of which are trusted by coaches and players alike. I mean, truly, from Mike Donahoe, who's in charge of equipment, all the way to Craig Allison, who's national sales executive. I mean, these guys know it. They know they've been journeymen in the industry from sons themselves in the game to them being in the game. They've seen all levels from high school, college, and beyond. And when they go to games, man, this is what they look at. So they are absolutely ingrained in it and in your community. Rush Niggett, I got to mention him, helps spearheads all the efforts. He is as ingrained in the community as possible. So he's a guy that you want around for a lot of different things. He's great baseball knowledge guy. So, hey, make sure you check them out today. All questions, I guarantee you, will be answered. Go to their website, victorymounds.com, and every question you had, from the rubber to pitching mounds to just the home plate, they've got you covered. And if you mentioned that you heard them on our broadcast, you can earn a free assessment on the playability of your field. So coaches and everybody out there, make sure you mention that you heard us. You heard them on our broadcast. That's right. Some perks for you there. Hey, let's go ahead and continue along with the episode. Again, brought to you by Victory Mounds. From the home studio here, again, appreciate it. Again, a lot of cool things here. We have some head nods here, and of course, not only Bernansky, but we have Davis here as well. Any more ideas and thoughts? We'd love to fill everything as much as humanly possible, right? By the way, just here for the gossip in case you couldn't read that there. But nonetheless, a lot of fun coming up your way right now as we get headed. Of course, now as we sit here in February, man, we are inching closer, but there are things to lead up. There's a lot of things going on. Of course, we're not in the baseball season right now, but there's a whole lot to do. And of course, how do you get involved? How can you do that? How can you still stay in baseball outside of the season? Well, a lot of great organizations out there, and one of those, the Cedar Valley Crush organization. We get the chance to talk about what a great group that is. The expanse, the platform that they have, the different places that they go. And we get the chance to dive into all of that right here and right now as we get the chance to talk with the one and only Casey Hoffert joining us here on the Insulites.com hotline. And Casey, thanks for joining us, man. I know that there's a lot to do, a lot to talk about, and I appreciate your time.
Hey, thanks for having me. I came to talk about baseball, and I figured out a Valentine's Day present for my wife, so I appreciate that. Good looking out. She likes baseball too, so I might as well just get her that membership and uh,
Hey,
call it a big deal. So
hey,
appreciate that.
I love that. Hey, it's turning into a romantic thing because how can you not be romantic about baseball, right?
Hey, I agree. I mean, yeah, I think somebody once said that in a movie somewhere, but yeah,
Yeah. Hey,
absolutely.
I try and keep it. I love my movie quotes for sure. So anything baseball related, hey, we'll be best friends that way. But
Perfect.
hey, Casey, I wanted to get you on here. We've been in contact, man, but I I am in love with the game, and it's so beyond just the season, right? There's you obviously know that more than anything. You're with your involvement with Cedar Valley and everything that's going on there. It's an expansive thing. You know, you and I got to talk and before the show and through some email exchanges, and there's a whole lot that you guys do. But before that, let's kind of dive into first off, what is Cedar Valley Crush? And first off, how did you get involved with such a great organization?
Yeah, so Cedar Valley Crush was created, before I got involved. We had some great baseball coaches in the area that saw there was a need in Northeast Iowa specifically to try and keep up with the Cedar Rapids area, the Des Moines area where baseball was so prevalent. I mean, if you look back through the history of Iowa State baseball and the teams that are down there every year, you start to see a pretty common pattern of they're doing stuff not just in season. And Northeast Iowa was definitely lacking in that, and that can be seen just in how many representatives we've had at the state tournament. Yeah, we get a few here and there, and we have some strong programs up here, but it's better now than it's been in the past. I think a lot of that has to do with getting some spring and some fall baseball options going. Coach Klunder, former WSR baseball coach,
Yeah.
and then went to Central, obviously. Now he's at Wartburg. I've known Coach Klunder for a long time. I live in Waverly myself. That's kind of how I got started. He brought me along in, and
Mm-hmm.
after I ran Waverly Shell Rock Little League and helped with that program as much as I could, and my son was starting to age out, he reached out and just asked if I'd have interest in helping him with this other entity that is Crush Baseball. He wasn't alone. Coach Gable, Hall of Famer in himself,
Yeah.
was another big part of Crush. They laid the groundwork so that we could have what we have now. Um,
Yeah.
Coach Klein, we'd be remiss if we didn't mention Coach Klein, former Cedar Falls coach, current Dunkerton head coach,
Yeah.
used to be with PG. He's been a great asset for us. He's a great guy, a great coach of those student athletes. He's a big part of what we do as well. And we've grown exponentially, which has been great. So that's kind of how I got started, was just Coach Klunder coming and saying, "Hey, we need somebody who's got some of that organizational skill set to get this thing up and going. There's definitely something here, but obviously those guys all have primary coaching jobs that they got to be concerned with. So we had to look
Yep.
outside of that, and that's sort of how I fell into it.
Yeah.
Been with the program 5 years now, and we have grown every year. We've put a lot of baseball players into the D3, JUCO, D2, even a couple of D1 ranks. So
Yeah.
we've had some really good baseball players come through.
Oh yeah.
And our total goal is just to make baseball better in Northeast Iowa. So that's what
Yeah.
we're here for.
Well, and again, the expansive thing is, I mean, not just what you see guys from Waverly, Shell Rock, obviously, but Denver, Dyke New Hartford, Iowa Falls, Alden, Bosco, from the Bosco Catholic School District, and I mean, it's an expansive amount. You know, I got the chance to just look at one look at the 16U team, and you see the variety in there. You don't see a whole lot of you see a lot of guys, but there's a lot of variety there. So kind of take us through a little bit here the scope of this, the range, because again, I know that it's kind of all in Northeast Iowa kind of area, but that's a big area, and you cover a lot of that. So kind of take us to
Yeah.
kind of the scope of the schools and everybody that we could see, and everybody that may want to attend if they're in that area.
Sure. This last fall, I'll just speak to this last fall. I think it was a
Yeah.
good microcosm of what we've had. We had 24 schools represented in our program from the Northeast Iowa area. Uh, I mean, you're talking Cedar Falls, Waterloo West, Waterloo East, Don Bosco, Waverly, Shell Rock, you had Denver, Dike, you had Sumner Fred, you had, I mean, you name it. In this area, we've probably had a player come from their school. Clarksville, we've had Nashua, Plainfield, even some schools who maybe aren't traditionally thought of as a powerhouse baseball program, but these kids want to play baseball and they want to be the best version of themselves when they step on a varsity baseball field. And um, baseball, like unlike any other sport, you can't just walk out there and do it, right? Like you
Yeah.
don't just walk out and throw 80 pitches. You got to ramp up to that.
Mm.
You can't just step on the mound and expect to dominate if you haven't put the work in early.
Yeah.
So we try to scratch that itch for those players, and we want to meet them where they're at. Not everybody is looking to play college baseball, but there are some that are, and so we want to have some of that. But at the same token, we want to be able to help kids, get to where they want to be, even if that's I just want to be the best high school baseball player I possibly can be, and I want to be a productive member of my team at the varsity level. How do we help get those reps? So we do have a lot of different levels, and
Yeah.
that's helped us expand. It's helped us grow. It's helped us hit more schools. The Appling and Parkersburgs, the Jessups. We got a lot of those NICL teams represented in our program.
Yeah.
Top of Iowa, we get a lot of top of Iowa. We get a little bit of the Upper Iowa Conference to come down, and then of course the NICL, the Northeast Iowa Conference, and then the Valley. We get from all of those conferences. So for the most part, the coaches have been very good to let players play for us.
Mm-hmm.
And that's helped the growth of the program as a whole.
And again, ladies and gentlemen, here, yeah, Casey Hoffert joining us, the Cedar Valley Crush, as we talk about what a great organization that is and what it brings to the table, the expansiveness of it. And, it's funny, Casey, I looked and I believe in one class alone already, you've gotten, close to what, 12, beyond 12 commitments. You mentioned that already about all the college, all the collegiate kids that have come from the area, from what enters into your system. I mean, and the fact is, looking at college recruiting is tough, man. Yeah, you know that, and you've seen it now. Um, I know that it's been just recently, obviously with the new recruiting rules and when they can get there, and all that goes down. But I wanted to touch on that here briefly before we dive back into more on the organization. But that was already kind of quite the before the rule change. It was quite the battle, right? It was already quite the battle with kids to try and get the not just a spot but the right spot as well. How has it been like from your vantage point? I know we talked to a lot of school coaches, and they kind of go through that, but you get to see them outside and kind of in that pursuit of the college game, maybe a little bit more so than others. What has that been like, and what has this new rule been like, and or how has it altered much from your vantage point?
Yeah, it's tough. It's a tough time to be a kid looking to go play some ball.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of factors at play. I'm certainly not an expert in any of it, but
Mm.
COVID year certainly has some fact the transfer portal.
Yep.
We're not probably to the point where we're worried so much about NIL money or anything like that, but that certainly throws another piece to the puzzle out there. But
Yep.
it's definitely different than 20 some years ago when I was going through it. You don't just eh, have a handshake and know you're good. There's a lot that goes into it. Exposure certainly is part of what we try to do and help with for our players.
Yep.
We want to put them in positions to where they're playing in front of the right people. The biggest thing I can say for kids, in my opinion, is to have realistic expectations
Yep.
of what you are as a player, what your coaches are telling you are as a player. Um, it's it's different than it used to be. You don't just walk on and you're not just a D1 player because you think you're a D1 player.
Mhm.
That scale has changed, right? The Division Ones are not taking as many high school players. They can say they are, but the stats show it. You look at
Yeah.
the transfer portal and how that's changed things, and I think everybody has to reset expectations. And if you're given the opportunity to play this game at the next level, no matter what level that is, you should be happy that you have that opportunity. Because I tell you what, there's some dang strong D3 schools out there that would put a whooping on some of them D1 schools. I tell you what, if you're talented, they will find you. Um, the measurables, I think, is what's changed,
Yep.
right? The scale that they put you on to start with has changed. They're not uh, right, wrong, or indifferent. You may be the best baseball player in the entire state of Iowa. If you're 5'4", you got an uphill battle. It's just the nature of where we're at. You might have to take a non-traditional method to get where you want to go. I'm not trying to say that you're not a D1 baseball player. You might be the best D1 baseball player that's walked the state of Iowa. But it's going to get tough to get looks up front if you don't have some of those just stock measurables in place, right?
Yep.
That's, I think, the biggest change I've seen with it is just where do we start at? And knowing that there's not just one path to get where you want to go. So from a Crush standpoint, our goal is to try and find a fit and help you find a fit that is best for you.
Mm-hmm.
If that means having some tough conversations about places, we'll do that. But really, our goal is to give you opportunity to showcase your skill set in front of the right people so that when the time comes, you have options. And anybody who has options should consider themselves lucky, as far as I'm concerned, that you're not being told that you don't get to play baseball anymore, because everybody gets told that at some point. And the longer you can wait until that happens, the better off you are. So,
Exactly.
yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point to put up, because so many of us, again, everyone, yeah, aim high for sure, but I think when people aim high, it's not always the D1. Like you said, go out to Coach Klender as well. I mean, what a fantastic guy he is, and he has made Central as great as they are, and of course he's going to make Wartburg there as well. But you got
Yep.
from Central Wartburg, I mean, you got a lot of Simpson. I mean, I'm missing out on a lot of people. The Dewhawks, obviously, you got to go to Loris, and you got to look at what everyone else has. I mean,
BV's a force up there, and
yeah,
BV's a force up there in Western Iowa. But then, I mean, even look at the junior college ranks, right? You've
yep,
got four powerhouses in the state. You got ranked teams. You've got Southeastern making it as far
yep,
as they did last year. Iowa Central. You got Kirkwood. You got Nyack. You've got some real players at the JUCO level, and they are not just competing; they're putting people in the D1 ranks after they're done. So,
yeah,
it's there's a lot to be said about going somewhere where you feel fit,
yeah,
right? And learning how to grind, because baseball is a grind. It just is. If you want to be that D1 player, you want to play at that professional level, you got to grind. And no better place to learn than a spot where you're going to get the opportunity to do so.
hmm
So there's always sort of been a stigma of, oh, I don't want to go to a junior cup. Man, I tell you what, if you're lucky enough to have one of those teams come and say, we've got a roster spot for you, you should be thankful that it's there and take advantage of it, because no better place to learn the grind than a place where you get opportunity. And
yeah.
we got a lot of those schools that shouldn't be overlooked in the state.
And of course, you mentioned obviously the JUCO. You get a lot more reps. You get a lot
Absolutely.
more in the opportunity, all that there. I mean, they're already playing games at this point, and I know that at every other level they're waiting for their season to start. Which thankfully here, Casey, we finally have baseball to be played in Iowa here coming up this month. But going back into Cedar Valley Crush again, I love the connections that there are from PBR, perfect game like you mentioned. But I love the fact that, as you were mentioning, there's in Iowa, man, there's so many multi-sport players, and I get the conversation on specializing, but man, a lot of guys don't want to yet, and I think the having the opportunity to go, hey, you know what, let's work around all those schedules, I think is something that doesn't get offered as much. And one of the things I loved about our conversation is that you're curtailing to a whole variety of guys that in the end just want to play baseball, and there's various leagues that they can kind of get into that.
Sure. Yeah, and I mean, we know that that doesn't fit everybody as well, right? There are kids that specialize and that want that, and that's great. We would not discourage a kid from that by all means. I think of our relationship, for example, with one of them I think you've had on the past, and Torin, and what they're doing down there at 3Ts, and we have a ton of respect for that program, and we're more than happy to, share ideas with them and work with them whenever we can. I have a lot of respect for the Sticks program and what they're doing down there. We play those guys with our top teams regularly, but you'll definitely see a difference in the makeup of rosters. We've got the majority of our guys are multi-sport athletes. And I think you see that a lot in Northeast Iowa just based off the demographic of school we have.
Mm-hmm.
Cedar Falls, Waterloo, it may be even Waverly may be the exception to that. But when you're talking the NICL schools, you're talking the upper Iowa, the top of Iowa, like a lot of times if you're an athlete, you're an athlete, and you're going to be an athlete for everything at those schools, right? You're going to be the quarterback, the shortstop, the point guard. You're going
Mm-hmm.
to be the 145 pounder and the second baseman. Like you're doing multiple things, and they need it at those schools. Um, but there's still kids who love baseball first
Yep.
out of that group that want to play baseball at the next level. Well, how do they get exposed? How do they get the reps they need while still sort of playing second fiddle to the sport in season? And that's where we get a lot of our people. Our PBR team, you mentioned, we have PBR levels. We play the PBR circuit in the fall. We feel like the fall is about exposure. The fall is about showing off your talents. Um, Obviously, we want to compete. We don't get wrapped up in win-loss record. We get wrapped up in, are you showcasing yourself to your fullest ability? Are
Yep.
you being a good teammate? Are you representing Crush in the right way, your school in the right way, your family in the right way?
Mm-hmm.
Because we all know, we hear it from recruiters, we hear it from college coaches all the time. Like, they don't care if you go 0 for 2, but they do care how you treat people, how you act to your parents, how you do in school, how you represent yourself,
Mm-hmm.
almost as much, if not more, than can you hit a baseball.
Yep.
Um, the stats will show whether you can hit a baseball or not. They can see with their eyes whether you got the right stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whether you had contact that day or not. Um, but we still have to try and help those kids get out in front of the right people for that. And that's where our PBR tie-ins come in. We do play that circuit pretty religiously in the fall. But there's this whole other level of kid who that might not be what they're ready for, either from a talent standpoint,
Yep.
from a financial standpoint, from a schedule standpoint. And we understand that, and we want to try and give them opportunities as well. So we have a whole nother level with our programs where we play more local league type style baseball. We've used the Mount Mercy League in the past for fall. We're using a local high school league in the spring. Um,
Yep.
that's going to be an awesome fit for our guys. It's great for them to get reps. We treat spring a little differently than we do fall.
Okay.
Spring for us is a ramping up and being ready. We want kids to walk in with that shortened preseason that they have in baseball now. It's tough to ramp up in
Yeah.
2 weeks. Well, if you can have 50 at bats before you walk into that first day of practice, you're way ahead of the curve.
Yeah.
If you've ramped your arm up to where you're already at 60 to 80 pitches by the time you walk on, you might be ready to go full game week 1. If you just walk out there day 1 of high school practice, there's no way you're going to be ready to throw 80 pitches come that first game. Just not going to happen. So we really try to meet the player where they're at based off of what they're trying to accomplish, and put them in a spot that's best for them and their development and where they're at. So the extra levels, if you will, has really allowed us to do that in a pretty efficient manner.
And I think the one of the things I really liked, all of it. I liked all of it here, Casey. But one of the things that really stood out to me was how you view the spring, because of obviously way back when, it feels like forever now, there was little bit longer of practice time before you got games going, right? And then they shortened it, and boy, for others outside the sport, it may have been small, but man, what a big difference that is. And I like how I like the view on that because I do. Every year you get guys that think that they can go all worldly, but just start day one. And you know, I think it really goes a long way. I think that arm care, everything of that nature, as you mentioned, is huge and critical. And the whole landscape. I think everyone wants to get at it right away. Everyone wants to throw 90 out of the gate. But man, I love how you view the spring. And again, that's why obviously there's a lot of success here. But Casey, I also wanted to touch up here as we start to wind down. There's a lot of things that go into successful programs, right? And you obviously you know that very well. And again, there's so much that can go right, so much that can go wrong. But I think one of the things that it seems that Cedar Valley has, and I, over the years have heard a lot of great folks, a lot of great people, relationships. How are the relationships like with, again, 24 plus coaches? You get a lot of that. There's a lot of traffic there, but how is the relationship between not only that, but then then it's like, okay, now you got to worry about college coaches as well. And you have a lot of connections here, but how big is the relationship side of it when you have to factor in all the craziness that happens?
Yeah. Well, relationship is it's relationship business, right? Yeah, we're here for relationships. Um, because of the way we're set up, it does mean, we've talked a lot about the good. So before I go into that, I just want to make sure I point out that does mean that there's some things we can't offer to, and we
Yep.
know that. We know that we have some restrictions in that. We don't have the big indoor facility for full year round. It doesn't really necessarily fit our primary players that we've got playing for us. And that we know means we may miss some players that are right here in our backyard that want more and will make those trips to go. And we're never going to hold that against the kid. We want the kids to get what they're looking for out of it. But that then, on the other hand, gives us a little more credibility when we're in the relationship side of this with coaches, right? We're not just going to force a kid or get mad at a kid for leaving us to go play at a bigger and better, or what they perceive that to be, because they want more. That's great for that kid. Then let them do it. We're not gonna be mad or ever hold that against a kid.
Yeah.
Same for coaches. If they're sending their kids somewhere, but then they have one kid that doesn't fit, and we want to accommodate that. Our goal is to not tell kids no when it comes to playing baseball.
Mm-hmm.
We have relationships that are really strong with some coaches and some that are non-existent with others. What the common string is we do have relationships with each of these kids, and we try to put a lot of that relationship on them. We want them talking with their coaches. We want them communicating what they're doing with us, what they're doing with them, so that we're not disrupting whatever progress they're making with their high school coach. Most of these high schools have already started their winter throwing programs.
Yep.
They've got plans for their kids, and the plan for the pitchers from Sumner Fred may be very different than the plans for the kids throwing at WSR.
Yeah.
We want to try and be mindful of both of those plans, and that's where we really communicate to the kid, and like, you got to tell us where you're at, right? Where does your coach want you to be when you walk in day one? Does he want you at 60 pitches? Does he want you at 80 pitches? Does your coach only want you throwing 30 pitches a week? Like, we have to have those communications with the kid. And by the time they're in this program, we're going to treat them a little more like adults, because they've got to learn how to handle that conversation themselves and take some ownership of their own development and ownership of their own arm care. From a college coach standpoint, I think we're pretty well recognized, at
Yep.
least around the D3 ranks. I think all the D3 coaches know who we are at the very least. I know that you look at a roster anywhere in the arc now, and you probably will see one or two Crush kids scattered through there. Starting to see more and more of that in the JUCO ranks as well. I know we got a couple kids up at Opera, Iowa. So that definitely helps our reach. But then it's the relationships with, Rob at PBR has been a great relationship for us. The fact that he knows who we are, that we can have a conversation with him and be quite frank with him on a kid, on a player. From time to time, he may reach out and say, "Hey, this guy wants an invite to the All-State. What do you think?" And he'll take our advice on that. We've built that trust up with him, and we wouldn't be where we're at without all of those relationships.
Yeah.
Coach Klunder, we mentioned him in the beginning, kind of helped get Crush started. But that relationship is as strong as it ever has been. And,
Mm-hmm.
if there was ever a kid that was saying, "Hey, I wonder, should I go play with that?" We've got a good enough relationship that I can tell you exactly what my thoughts are on that, coach. And
Yeah.
um, not that I have a bad one that I would point out. I don't, which we're lucky for. So we appreciate the relationships. They're not all just mine, of course. Coach Klein's got a ton of relationships in the baseball in the state of Iowa. Um, Coach Davis, who is sort of our number two, right? And he pitched at a high level in high school himself. He's from the Cedar Valley. He's got a son playing on the AP school. He's got a lot of relationships. We're just happy that it works for us. But we're always looking for more. So any of you parents in the Northeast Iowa area who are passionate about baseball and wanting to get back to the game, if you're looking for a way to get involved with a program like Crush, hey, hit me up. We'll find a place for you. There's always jobs out there that we can use, and there's things we can do better at, and we
Yep.
know that. We're just trying to keep it together at this point. So
Hey, so far, so good, right? So far, doing a great job. And again, ladies and gentlemen, Casey Hoffert from Cedar Valley Crush on the insights.com hotline is we go ahead on our broadcast, once again, presented by Victory Mounds. Now, again, as we talked about the spring here a little bit here at Casey, and of course, I think there's a lot that goes into, again, kind of how you contemplate the season, how you get the season rolling. Again, I love that. And certainly, ladies and gentlemen, if you just got to this point, make sure to catch us up. Go back, rewind on here on Rockfin, of course, and of course later on YouTube, and catch that part. Really, really cool. How do you, on the opposite end of that, from the spring, what's the big focus on the fall? Once you on the other
yeah,
side here, what's the big
so
focus and how does that differ?
yeah, so fall's different, right? They're
Yep.
coming out ready. We're not ramping up anymore. They should be fully ready to go. They just finished their season. They just came off their summer. Usually there's a couple week gap in there. What we try to do early in the fall is at least keep them sharp, right? We practice more in the fall than we do in the spring. Spring, it's tough to practice. We don't have an indoor facility. It's a little cold to be out there some days, although today wouldn't have been a bad day to get some BP in or something. But we do like open practices for all of our teams. So anybody who is available, they're not mandatory, but anybody who is available can come and get some position work in, can get some batting in, can throw a bullpen, whatever it is that they're needing. But fall, we sort of shift to a little more focus on exposure. Um,
Yep.
Spring, we want to ramp up and be ready to show our best stuff in the summer. Now you should be on your best stuff, so let's go showcase it. So we do run more the tournament style PBR circuit. We want to get them in front of scouts. We want
Yeah.
to go compete. We want to go showcase our best stuff, um, and start getting those conversations with college coaches. And that's more where our focus turns in the fall. Um,
Yeah.
we do have, of course, that other level. Maybe they weren't real happy with their high school season and they want to get better.
Uh huh.
That's where we run our league teams. The only way you're going to get better is through reps.
Yep.
So how do we get those kids that maybe aren't ready for the exposure side more reps so that at the very least when they walk in spring, they're a little more prepared to maybe take on a varsity role with their high school team. And that's where those league teams do come into play. And it's just opportunity at that point.
Yeah, and again, a lot of different ways to get involved here. As before we wrap up here, again, how do they get involved here? Not just not just if they want to be a player, but beyond that as well. I know that you're always there to help beyond just the playing side of the game as well. But how do they get involved? First off and foremost, where do they got to go in order to get involved with Cedar Valley Crush?
Yeah, I mean, we'll always take a message. You can direct message us on Facebook, Twitter, X, whatever that's called now. I
It's
guess
a
I'll
hybrid.
be honest. Yeah, whatever that thing is. Feel free to send us a message. We're out there. Cedar Valley Crush Baseball.
Uh-huh.
You can always reach out to me directly. More than happy to help out. Um, we do open tryouts in the fall
Okay.
usually. So right between the end of baseball season and the beginning of our fall season, there's usually some open tryouts for kids that are looking for a new home or wanting to play more baseball. So those are great spots. And then, spring wise, we usually start with those kids that played with us in the fall, but we're always open to taking on more if they're looking for a spot. So
That is amazing. And man, Casey, I'm just looking at the clock here. We've already taken up 35 minutes and it felt like 5. My goodness. I think
good.
we should have more conversations in the future here because this is amazing. But
Hey, anytime. I like I told you before in our I love what you guys are doing for the game of baseball in the state of Iowa. Any way that Crush can help you with it, we're all on board for it. I think we all want the same thing. You guys have been a good voice for the sport in the state, and we really appreciate what you guys are doing. I know the kids get excited when they see their names show up that they've been committed. They share that stuff. I see it all the time. Your conversations with Rob and your high and tight show, and shoot Valentine's presents for everybody on some subscriptions. It sounds like
it's
I think that,
romantic all over the board.
just some good stuff you guys are putting out there. So if we can ever facilitate or help, by all means, let us know. We'd be happy to
Oh,
do so.
we can't wait to be out there as well. Be out there getting everything out set. I loved it. Heaven on earth for me is always the baseball field, Casey, and I'll tell anybody that anywhere you go, really, it doesn't matter. But yeah, we would love to make sure we're out there with you guys, getting the show in, talking to guys. That's where we love it. And but before we go here, Casey, I did a last question. And I've asked you the grueling gauntlet, but I got one more question to ask.
All
And
right.
before I do that, I have to make sure I have the right hat on. I mean, we got this guy, but let me go ahead and get the big hat on, and that's this guy.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
yeah, I
Yep.
have to ask the big question with the big hat, right?
It's
And
only fitting.
that is when you get the chance to get out to that ballpark, wherever that may be. I mean, it doesn't have to be at a pro game or anything like that. But if you get the chance, I'm always looking for. I have a concession stand conversation segment that I always want to get the best recommendations for. So if you, Mr. Hoffert, are out there and about, you get the chance to get there. What's the go-to food? What's the go-to baseball food for you?
Okay, so at the high school level, I got to give you levels on this because
I love that answer. I love that.
concession stands are not all the same. Uh, if I'm in a high school game, I got to try the popcorn. I want to try everybody's popcorn, see whose is the best. But in
Popcorn
my
rock.
heart, that's not really a baseball food, right? To me,
Yeah,
uh, put me in Wrigley, give me a Broughton old style out in the bleachers, and let's get this thing going. So I don't know. I would say just generic baseball concession, peanuts is the way to go.
I like that. Now, a side note to that: if you get to a game, a pro game, do you go for the souvenir cup?
Depends on their refill policy,
Yeah. Oh, there you go. There you go.
right? I don't really need to be carrying around the cup, so chances are I'm not going to take it with me anyway. But if they got a good sweet deal on the refills, then that's where they'll get me.
Oh,
Yep.
no doubt. Well, hey, let me take this guy off, get this guy back on, and say, hey, Casey, thanks again for joining us, man. Really appreciate it. Can't wait to get you back on here for a lot more conversation.
Yeah, we'll be looking forward to it.
All right, ladies.
Appreciate it.
Thank you again, ladies and gentlemen. We are going to say, we're going to pause for right now. We'll be back with more here as we get rolling on here. Again, you've been listening to High and Tight. Here our conversation with Casey Hoffert of Cedar Valley Crush. Check them out online. Check them out on Facebook, like you said, on X, Twitter, the combo, however you want to call it. And make sure to check them out today. All right, we'll go ahead and we'll say sayonara for now. Thanks again for listening in.